My FPL Game Week 16 team selection. In today's video, we'll first of all have a look at the transfer I've already confirmed if you haven't seen it yet. Then we'll move on and have a look at some future plans. I've got real issues in my defense this week. Aït-Nouri is about the only fit playing defender with a good fixture this week. We've got Rico Lewis suspended. Gabriel is still a doubt. Mykolenko has Arsenal and Greaves can't even get in the squad for Ipswich at the moment. I've got two more free transfers. I'm planning on using both probably going into the deadline because I don't feel like we can rely on Gabriel. There are big benching decisions and a captaincy decision to be made. Cole Palmer was great last week. Mo Salah will be the most captain player, and Bukayo Saka has just hauled in the Champions League last night as well. There are big decisions to be made in my Game Week 16 team selection. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. And before we go to Game Week 16, let's have a look at how I got on in Game Week 15. I did get a green arrow, basically because of two players. Cole Palmer with the Campsy armband getting 18 double to 36. And I kept Brian and Burmo. The Everton-Liverpool game has just been called off, was just incredible for me. Not only have I saved my triple captain, so it should give me another double to play my triple captain in. My planned transfers was Rico Lewis out and Burmo out for Trent and Rodgers. Rodgers did blank. Of course, we don't know what Trent would have done. But I also moved my captaincy armband from Mo Salah to Cole Palmer. So, of course, we'll never know how well that went. But it does look like it probably paid off pretty heavily. I did actually end up playing with 10 players because my defense is in absolute pieces. Gabriel doesn't look like he's necessarily going to be fit for the weekend. He didn't feature at all, even in the squad in the Champions League midweek. Mykolenko does have Arsenal. Greaves, again, not even getting in the squad this week. Aït-Nouri is the only one propping it up, but is playing for a Wolves team who look pretty poor at the moment. And then, of course, Rico Lewis did pick up a second yellow, a full red card in that game. So I will be looking at defenders because they let me down again this week, and I'm sure they will continue to do so going forward. And the other one is Alexander Isak. I don't have him. The Isak to Jackson move has just not worked. I do have plans to get Alexander Isak back in, but it's probably in place of Matheus Cunha rather than going with Jackson and trying to own both of them. So 68 points for me this week. It was 8 above my safety score. It did give me a green arrow from 50k up to 30k. Pretty happy with it. It was mainly just getting the Campsy call right though. So just in case you haven't seen my transfer plans video from earlier on in the week, before I made any transfers, I had 3 free transfers and 1.5 million in the bank, and I sold Mbeumo down to Morgan Rodgers. I did it before Mbeumo dropped in price. I did it before Rodgers rose in price, so I did get a little bit of value there. Now, I could have gone with Enzo Fernandez. He's the other one that I've looked at. At the moment, because I've got Jackson and because I've got Palmer, I didn't particularly want a triple up on the Chelsea attack, although it is actually something I'm considering over the next couple of weeks, which we'll talk about in a moment. Rodgers is also just a nailed 90-minute play. He's playing every game for them at the moment. He is very attacking, and I kind of know what I'm going to get from him, whereas Enzo Fernandez still feels like a little bit of an unknown. That combined with having double Chelsea attack meant I favoured Rodgers over going with Enzo. That transfer was confirmed on Saturday evening, leaving me with 2 free transfers and 3.6 million in the bank. So with that in mind, we then turn our attention very much to my defence. 2 free transfers, 3.6 million in the bank. I plan on keeping Gabriel for now because it did sound like there was a chance he played last weekend. Didn't feature in the Champions League midweek, but there was a bit of rotation, so maybe he'll be available for Everton at home, if not Crystal Palace in the weekend after. So I am keeping Aït-Nouri, and I am going to be keeping Gabriel, which means Lewis, Mykolenko, and Greaves. I need one of them at least to make up my third starting spot, but I may even need a little bit of bench cover if Gabriel is unlikely to be available this week. Lewis is the one that I think there is a lot of use for in future weeks. Although they've just lost 2-0 in the Champions League to Juventus, they're leaking goals everywhere. They don't seem to be able to sort it out. And it looks like the likes of Akanji, Stones, and Ake are all going to be out until the new year as well. So even with some of those upcoming fixtures, he might not be as useful, and he's the most expensive. I do have plans in the future to go from Cunha to Isak, and I'm really tight in terms of money. So as much as I might like Lewis in the next couple of games after Man United were suspended and then Aston Villa, I think he probably is the one that needs to make way first. Mykolenko is a really interesting one. I don't have that much of a use for him over the next sort of 10 game weeks or so. However, with Everton-Liverpool being postponed, there is a chance of a Everton double game week coming. Probably game week 24-25 is the prediction at the moment. And he might be a little bit more useful there. And I might use a rotation of him and a couple of other cheaper defenders to try and build up my squad sort of depth a little bit. Greaves, For some reason, Ipswich don't want to keep a centre-back on the bench. They could have done with it at the weekend, but they don't want to. And I don't think Greaves is in that first choice lineup at the moment, so we just can't rely on him. So all three of these have reasons to sell, but I'll probably end up keeping Mykolenko for now. The first one I look at selling is Lewis, and I have the money to go straight up to Trent or Van Dijk. I think it will be Trent. Van Dijk's highest scoring season for Liverpool is 5 goals. I think it's 7 attacking returns. He only got 2 goals last year, and Trent has been getting double-digit sort of attacking returns every year since he's really broken into that Liverpool team. He's not fully nailed as much as Virgil van Dijk. There is a slight chance they play someone else at right back, and then Bradley when he's back in the new year. But I do think that Lewis to Trent is most likely for my first defensive transfer this week. Then the next one comes down to, do I think that there's likelihood that we don't get Gabriel fit and available? In which case I need to look at one of the cheaper defenders that I could potentially bring in. There are a few options. I could go to Levi Colwill as just a set and forget option, leave him in my team for the long term. The Chelsea run of fixtures look pretty nice. The other one is Howson, and apologies, last time I put him in my video, I butchered his name, so hopefully that's a little bit better. West Ham at home this week, I really like. The long-term fixtures rotate quite well with Mykolenko, and then Anderson at Crystal Palace. Now, Liverpool away this week is not great. Southampton at home next week is much, much better. So basically, to talk to you what my plan is in terms of my defenders is to keep Mykolenko, Lewis to Trent, Greaves to Howson, and then Aït-Nouri to Anderson. And I will put on screen now the rotation between about now and game week 30, which is when I'm starting to think I'll play the next wildcard in game week 30. The rotation between Mykolenko, Howson, and Anderson in that third defender spot, along with Gabriel and Trent, is really, really good. That's my plan with my sort of defensive transfers. Howson is a young centre-back. He looks to be coming into the team while Senesi is likely to be out for a few months. Anderson, of course, is the number one choice when he's available for Fulham, as he was earlier on in the season. And then we've got Mykolenko. Of course, Gabriel and Trent have their benefits as well. Now, just to go back and talk a little bit more about the mystery chip, we'll cover this very briefly. I did discuss what the chip does in my video yesterday. So if you haven't watched that and you're wondering what on earth this chip was and what it does, then go and watch yesterday's video. It's made me start to think a little bit about my chip strategy to start with. And I'm coming up with a little bit of a plan. Game week 30, I think, is the most likely week for me to be playing my wild card. I think game week 34, which is likely to be the biggest blank caused by the semi-finals of the FA Cup, will likely be a free hit. And I'll likely bench boost in game week 36, which is likely to be the biggest double of the season. Now, there is part of me that would like to play the assistant manager chip in the last 3 weeks of the season, play it on a team low down in the table, maybe playing against teams in the middle of the table, because of course you get a bonus for picking a manager who's playing teams high above them in the table, because those teams in the middle of the table might, be on the beach. They might not have a lot to play for, and those teams fighting relegation might pick up some surprise wins, which could really boost you up the rankings and might be a nice differential. However, as I said, wildcard 30, free hit 34, and bench boost 36 is the initial plan, which leaves the assistant manager chip and the triple captain to be played between game week 31 and the 33 double, and then the 24-25 double, which is a prediction of where the Everton-Liverpool fixture will go into 24 or game week 25. So the wildcard free hit bench boost is not, of course, set, but that's the current plan. And then it's just which way round I want to play the assistant manager chip versus playing the triple captain chip. And I haven't fully decided that, and I don't really need to decide for now. If I had to make up my mind, I would probably play the assistant manager chip first in game week 24 to game week 26. And then I would look to play the triple captain in game week 33 in that double. But again, a lot could change. It's just first thoughts. So having a look at my team going into the weekend, and I actually think there's hits on the horizon for my team. And I think there might be a chance I pick a -4 or a -8 in the next couple of game weeks. Now, that maybe feels a little bit weird, but -8, I feel like I'm chasing constantly with my defenders and trying to do my best. I'd rather get to a point where I'm suddenly happy with my team and then I can start to build going forward. Hits are not great this season, but a -8, as it, I was 8 points above my safety score this week. It moved me from 50k to 30k. It would move me from 30k back to 50k. And being 50k at this point in the season is absolutely no issue at all. And it would hopefully put me in a position to start rolling some transfers and put my team in really good stead going forward. So when we get to the future planning bit at the end of this, I'll talk about what that -8 might be next week. In goal, we're going with David Raya. Arsenal are looking pretty good defensively, and they have Everton at home. Fabianski with Bournemouth on my bench. Into defence, we are going to start Aït-Nouri. We are going to start Gabriel. The chances of Gabriel being available do look quite slim. We will have a preference comments on Friday, though, and I'm hoping we might get something a little bit positive. The other thing to mention is there's no 12:30 game in the UK on Saturday, and Arsenal kick off at 3 o'clock, which means they are the joint first game of the game week. So we might get some early team news if Gabriel is going to be available or not, which could help with potential future planning. At the moment, because of what we heard last week, I think there's an okay chance he's available. So all I've done in this team is the Trent Alexander-Arnold in for Rico Lewis move. Again, if I had the luxury, doing it in for Greaves would probably be what I'd want to do. But I know I'm going to need the money in future weeks. So I do think that in for Lewis is most likely. And City, I feel like we just can't rely on at the moment. If we hear that Gabriel is a major doubt or he's not going to play going into the deadline, Greaves to Howson of Bournemouth for West Ham at home on the Monday night is likely to be my second transfer this week. And just keep Howson on the bench in case Gabriel doesn't play. Aït-Nouri, Gabriel, Trent with Howson on the bench with Mykolenko starts to look pretty good for the next couple of weeks. Then into midfield, we've got Palmer, Saka, Salah. All three of them are on fantastic form. Saka was just hauled in the Champions League. Palmer was great last weekend, and Salah had a rest. He scored his penalty midweek, and he's going to be a very popular option again. We're giving Semenyo one final week. It is West Ham at home. If he doesn't do anything in this game, he may well be sold to someone like an Ahmad or an Enzo Fernandez to help me get up to Alexander Isak, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I am going to start him at home to West Ham, and I'm currently benching Morgan Rogers. Of course, they played Champions League midweek. It was a well-fought win for them, but Semenyo has had a full rest, and Forest are not a team you really want to be backing too much against generally so far this season, although they did get beat by Arsenal a couple of weeks ago. So, 2 transfers planned of Trent in for Lewis and Rogers in from Burma, which has already happened. If Gabriel is a doubt, then Greaves up to Howson of Bournemouth is the most likely scenario. Then up front, we've got Jackson, João Pedro and Cunha. 3 really nice home games. 3 players who have actually underperformed. Jackson was really upset after the Spurs game, which is both a sad thing to see as a Chelsea fan, but it's because he wants to impact games, and he really, really wants to impact particularly big games that he knows the fans are relying on him for. Chelsea won that game, so there's absolutely no hard feelings there. He's definitely Chelsea's number 1. It also sounds like Christopher Nkunku is travelling with Chelsea to their game on Thursday in the Conference League. There's also rumours of a João Felix slight knock at the moment. I've got no doubt that Jackson is Chelsea's number 1. João Pedro has been disappointing, but Brighton have a nice run of fixtures, and then we're going to stick with Cunha, I think, for one more week at home to Ipswich. And if he blanks again, he'll almost certainly go next week, despite it being Leicester away. Captaincy is between one of those 3 big midfielders. I think I'm going to rule out Saka and Everton. Although Everton did capitulate against Manchester United recently, generally they've been pretty strong defensively. And actually another team that's been really strong defensively at times this season has been Fulham. Fulham really put up a fight against Arsenal in game week 15, and Saka really struggled up against Robinson. The only slight difference to that game is Fulham's one of their centre-backs, Bassi, is suspended, and they have an Anderson injury if he's not back, which means they're playing neither of their first-choice centre-backs. There might be chances for Liverpool and Salah there. But at the moment, I've moved my armband on to Cole Palmer. Brentford away from home just concede a lot of chances. It is the later game on the Sunday evening. Palmer is, I think, not blanked at home for Chelsea in the Premier League since October last year. I'm by no means locking in the captaincy, but at the moment it's on Palmer, with Salah with the vice-captain. Trent planned transfer in for Rico Lewis, and the confirmed transfer was in Burmo to Rogers over the weekend. So just to talk to you about that future planning and that potential -8, and I know people will say, Harriet, why are you doing a -8? Your team looks fine. I just feel like I'm constantly chasing, and I need to start building up transfers again, particularly at some point with the mystery chip. If I play it in 24, if I want to change manager, that's even more transfers that I'm going to need. So anyway, Lewis, as I said, is almost, I feel very likely to leave for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Gabriel will start. But if he's a doubt, then Greaves to Howson of, there we go, Howson. I've butchered his name and I've butchered the spelling, is likely to be the case. And I will leave him on the bench, and then he'll sub in for Gabriel. I'll only do that close to the deadline if it looks like Gabriel is a considerable doubt. If we get news that Gabriel is going to play, then I'll probably just roll the second transfer, and it might mean I don't need a -8. It might then just be a -4 next week. It gives my team really nice this week. Very, very happy with it. It is 3 transfers, but I do need to fix my defense. You tell me every week in the comments, and I fully agree. And maybe this is the time that I finally buckle up and do it. Going into game week 17, this might be where the -8 occurs. And part of it is because of potential price changes. Now, I will be looking at Cunha and I will be looking at Semenyo. If they both disappoint again this week, they could both be out. Now, that would be Semenyo out. And I'll be looking to bring in probably Enzo Fernandez in my midfield there. Now, he goes away to Everton. Do I want triple Chelsea attack away at Everton? Not massively. I could play Rodgers at home to Manchester City, given the way that they are conceding goals at the moment. That's not the end of the world, given I already have double Chelsea attack in there. I would then look to sell Matheus Cunha and go to Alexander Isak as my forward. I'm slightly short of that, and the final transfer is the other defensive transfer that I said, selling Ryan Aït-Nouri and bringing in Anderson of Fulham. Now, you're probably thinking that seems like a wild -8. It might not all need to be done that week, but it's just 3 transfers I think I want to make. We've also heard that Callum Wilson is likely out for another couple of months, which just means the potential rotation for Alexander Isak in that forward spot for Newcastle gets less and less. And I just don't really want to be going without him. Yes, they do get to a point where their fixtures are slightly worse, like Aston Villa, Man United, Spurs, but that's not that bad for an attacker. And then they walk into Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, Fulham at home, without any Europe or anything to contend with, which is a really, really nice run. And it would start to build me a team that I'm once again happy with. As I said, Rodgers and Enzo actually rotate really, really well. I use FPL Rotation Planner. I've used it before. They rotate really well, as does the Anderson, Howson, Mikalenko trio. They rotate really well. And there's not very much budget invested in any of those rotations. It allows me to get Trent, Gabriel, Raya. It allows me to get Palmer, Salah, Saka with 2 mid sort of premium, Isak and Jackson. Of course, what this does is it locks me out of going Haaland anytime soon. And it basically, I can't get to Haaland very easily without maybe a hit, without maybe a wild card. I mean, I could do Salah and Isak out if I wanted to and try and squeeze him in that way. But just watching Manchester City perform at the moment, comparing him to someone like a Chelsea, to a Liverpool, to an Arsenal, I just don't feel like it's a good investment at the moment. And I don't see things changing very much for quite a while. So that's the potential -8. It would knock me down to 50k or about 20k places. I'm hoping to have a good week this week, and then the -8 doesn't feel that bad. Because if my rank goals, throughout the season, I always talk about this. After the last international break is top 1 million. At the end of the year, when we get the second wild card, is the top 250k. So if I was 50k going into game week 17 because I've just taken a -8, that is still a really, really nice place for me to be in. And it hopefully would put my team in a really good stead. Now, if Alexander Isak picks up a knock, if things change in my defense and Gabriel is okay, then I don't need to buy Howson just yet. And I could push that transfer further down the line. The chances of me taking this -8 are probably quite low. They're probably quite slim. But I am prepared to do it next week. If Semenyo blanks, if Cunha looks bad again, and Gabriel is a doubt this week, I may well be looking at a -8. The other thing to mention is I'm bringing in Anderson as the plan, and he's currently red flagged, and we don't even know if he's in training. He is expected to be back for Liverpool this weekend. He might not until Southampton next weekend. So if he's not available, then I just don't do that transfer either. But there are things that I'm planning, and I just feel like I'm doing my best to keep my head above water with my team a little bit. And I've not taken a single hit at all this season. So it might just be time just to do 2 at once, get things back on track, steady the ship a little bit, hopefully be in a good rank. So I'm hoping that game week 16 goes pretty well. I mean, we can have a look at just game week 18 pretty quickly. Trent would start, Gabriel would start, and then, of course, as I said, the rotation looks really nice. Howson has Crystal Palace at home that week. I will probably play Enzo at home to Fulham over Rodgers, who goes away to Newcastle. Then going into game week 19, João Pedro starts to have a couple more difficult fixtures. If I wanted to, I could bench him and play both Enzo and then play Rodgers as well. I've got Gabriel and Trent, who I'll play every week. I'll probably play Mikalenko at home to Forest, or I could play Anderson at home to Bournemouth. That is also a really busy time. So to have a good first sub is completely not the end of the world. And I just need to get to a point where I have some strength in depth and I could be rolling a few transfers. So That is the aim. I'm really, really hoping we get a green arrow in game week 16 because then the -4 doesn't feel -8 or -4 doesn't feel quite as bad going into next week. But even if it's just a flat arrow, if it's a small red, even if it's a red arrow, it really shouldn't change my mind on the transfers. As I said this week, though, it is Mbomo to Rodgers has been confirmed. Trent in for Lewis is most likely before the deadline. And if we hear negative news on Gabriel, then it will be Greaves up to Howson of Bournemouth to give me a little bit of strength in depth. Let me know what you think about my transfers this week. But if you've got to this point, thank you so much for watching it all. I'm really interested to hear what you think about the -8. Is it ludicrous or is it actually just quite sensible to get things back on track a little bit? Anyway, let me know what you think of the plans in the comments. Of course, fire away any of your questions as well. There'll be the final decisions video out on Friday evening. Then it's a slightly later deadline on lunchtime on Saturday as well. Thank you so much for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.